Howdy doody. It's Monday. Monday means we make stuff. Today we are going to talk about making a patchwork bag. So we're not gonna have a video next week. So if you're looking for us next week, you won't see us. I'm gonna show you why in a second. And we won't have a video this Friday because we're gonna close early on Friday. I figure most people are probably gonna be doing more festive stuff than looking at fabric anyway. So if you aren't doing more festive stuff, then you can always rewatch old ones because we've got a bunch now. So if you have questions, Rebecca will holler them at me. In the meantime, let's talk about what we're gonna learn today. This bag is one of the most popular bags we have in the store. This fabric, this was probably one of the very first samples I ever made in the store. This fabric is quite old. Please don't ask me if I have any of it. I haven't had any of it for like 4 years. I've got other stuff that's similar to it, but I don't have this. This is called the midi bag. It's a pattern by Quilt Smart Designs. The thing that makes it cool is there's no actual patchwork. So see how all of the angles line up just right? Everything's perfect in here. There is no patchwork in this bag. It's all sewn on an interfacing. If you've never made one of these bags before, I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks on how to do it. They're addictive. One, you can make them with pre-cuts. So if you've got mini charm packs or 5-inch charm packs or strip sets that you've got laying around that you don't need anymore, these are really great for that. So like this bag is made with 3 mini charm packs or 1 5-inch charm pack. Or actually the one I made today, I made with leftover strip sets. So the one I'm doing in the sample I made with leftover strip sets. So we're gonna talk a little bit about pre-cuts. So if you've got pre-cuts, it's a great way to go. If you have leftover bits, it's a great way to go, okay? So here's how their patterns work. This is actually what we store all our patterns in downstairs. Here is the pattern for this bag. This is the midi bag. There's actually 2 stabilizers in here, so you make 2 bags out of this one pattern. But once you buy the pattern and you have the directions, you don't have to keep buying the pattern to get the interfacings. You can buy them just by themselves. We sell them on our website. So that way you are going to get addicted to making these bags. You don't have to keep buying the pattern over and over and over again. You do need to buy the pattern the first time because yes, I'm going to give you tips. I'm not going to give you everything that's in the directions and in the pattern because I'm a fan of copyright. So, and the patterns are really great. So we're going to talk about a couple different options for patterns in a second. But first, we're going to talk about some tips on making these super fun bags. A couple of things I did a little different in my bag. In the pattern, it calls for fusible fleece to stabilize the bag. The bag I'm making today doesn't have any stabilizer in it because it's smaller and it's meant to be more of like a purse. This one I made with soft and stable. So see how it stands up? So I actually made this as like a knitting bag so that yarn doesn't get stuck and, you know, doesn't flop over and get stuck. I also put polyester strapping in the handles so the handles are really stiff instead of floppy. If you want to make a floppy bag, something you can roll up and stick in your suitcase or whatever, then just use the fusible fleece. But if you want it to stand up like this, get you some soft and stable. Half a yard pack, which we have on our website, is enough to make this bag. The Polyweb is also on our website. It's called Polyweb. It's Polyweb. So we sell it in white and black, and it's really easy to use in here. Okay, so we're going to talk tips and tricks, and then if you have questions about anything, holler them at Rebecca, and she will holler at me. Okay? All right. So this is how this works. This is what the stabilizer. It's not stabilizer. This is what the interfacing looks like. The pattern is actually printed on the interfacing, which is pretty cool. This one piece of interfacing makes a whole bag. So in the package, in the pattern, you get 2 of these. So I left one out to show you what it looked like when it was whole, and then I cut one up. We're not gonna look at this yet because we didn't do this yet. I left one whole so you could see it, and then I cut everything up. And I pre-made some of the steps, but we're gonna show you step to step to step, okay? One of the things I really like about this pattern, let me find the picture, is that based on how you finish it, it can look lots of different ways. So it can look like a little pull pouch, and you can do drawstrings to close it, or you can fold one end over the other and make it look like a little purse. So here they just used a fabric covered button, which I'm gonna put on the sale at the end if you want to fabric cover a button. And then they ran one loop through a strap here. I'm going to show you the steps some tips to putting the straps on there, but then the handle kit that I'm going to use when I put the handles on this is actually this one here, which I forgot to put on the sale, but it is available on the website. This is the Happy Handles kit, and it actually has tubing inside, so it makes a nice firm handle. But I'm going to show you how to make the tabs that will hold on to this as part of the steps. Okay, so these are the handles I plan on using on this bag. All right, first things first. This interfacing has a smooth side and a bumpy side. The smooth side has the printing on it. Here's the weird thing, the printing gets easier to see after you put the fabric on. So I cut mine out. If you look at the pattern, there's little scissors. Everywhere that there's scissors on the pattern, you should cut on the scissor line before you get started. This one, there's 4 panels, and each panel makes a portion of the bag. On this particular interfacing, this is where your tabs are. This is the piece that's going to make your button if you decide to make a button. Okay, so I've already cut my pieces out, and these are 2.5-inch squares that were left over from my Queen's Dream quilt. I have tons of these bits and pieces and scraps, but I also have these as pre-cut, so I'm going to show you those in a second. So what I suggest doing is laying out your fabric in a way, so like I didn't put these two together because they're the same print. Okay, so I laid these out in a way that they kind of mismatch a little bit because you want it to look scrappy. If you're starting with a mini charm pack, you're going to have many designs to choose from. My tip for that is just make sure that there aren't two that are next to each other. It gets a little hard to do that when you go to put them together at the end, but you can always lay it out and test it before you iron these down. But I've got 2.5-inch squares that are going to sit right inside this grid. So there's a grid printed on here that are these little brown dots. See the little brown dots? You might not be able to see it on the gray, but they're there. And I'm just going to take these 2.5-inch squares and I'm going to lay them pretty sides up on the interfacing. Okay, I'm not sure, I think there's 12 squares here. You don't have to get them perfect, but just make sure that you're covering the square the best you can. If you get this on here and it's a little cockeyed like that, it's still going to work. It's not going to be ideal, but it's still going to work. You just sort of lay these on top of the interfacing to make a patchwork design. Mix up your pieces as much as you want. If you don't want to use small charm packs and you want to use a big 5-inch square, you can, because look, here's a 5-inch square. You don't have to mix it up quite as much as this if you don't want to. But I just mix it up as much as I can because I don't like things next to each other that are the same. Okay? So I think we've got all of these laid out. I need another one. I need this one. Okay. So now we have 2 of each fabric, and they're just laid on top of the interfacing. Then I'm going to use my pressing sheet, my silicone pressing mat, because I don't want the fusible to come over on my iron. Turn off your steam, because if you steam on a silicone mat, you're just going to get wet hands, because it's not going to go through there.
Hot, wet hands. Hot,
wet hands. It's not fun. It does not take a whole bunch of heat to set these on this interfacing because the glue melts really easily. So what I do is I just get it pressed on there enough that it sticks, and then I flip it over and I press it from the back side. Now, this interfacing will melt if you use a super hot iron on it, or if you let it sit too long. Try really hard not to do that. Okay? So now we have fused all of our squares onto our interfacing. Pretty easy, right?
Pretty.
Woohoo! All right, now here's where the magic happens. I have my 1/4-inch piecing foot on my machine, because y'all know I love that. And here's where this turns into patchwork. I'm going to take the back side of the interfacing and fold it. Since the fabric is not sewn yet, it's just going to kind of fold on its own. So you fold that where those two pieces are butted up next to each other, drop your foot, and you just sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is why it doesn't have to be perfect, because the patchwork is going to happen in the foot. As long as your seam allowance is consistent, it's all going to work. Even if you can't make a good scant 1/4 inch, who cares? It's still going to work so long as the seam allowance you use is always the same. Okay, so whatever foot you have in here, use the edge of that foot. And you just sew along all of these little folds. All right. Oh, you know what? I need those. Oh, they're there. Never mind. I was going to say I need those scissors. We're just going to keep sewing these all the way along the short end. Okay. So I've already done that on this one. Now this is going to make you a little bit itchy, but stay with me for a second. We've sewn along our short ends. I'm going to take my scissors and snip, don't snip the thread, but just snip the interfacing inside that seam. Okay. This is so cool the way it works. Whoever came up with this, so much smarter than I am. Okay. So now when I take and open this up, see how those will bend? When that one's not stuck very good. When I fold this in half, see how those open up? Which seems a little counterintuitive, but we're going to sew them right back down in this step. Okay. There are arrows on one end of the interfacing. See how this arrow is pointing this way? That means it wants this seam allowance to go this way, and that arrow is pointing that way. It wants this seam allowance to go that way. If you lay it on your sewing machine mat this way, it'll automatically kind of do it for you. So I'm going to push this seam allowance that way and that one this one's going to go up and the other one's going to go down. They pretty much just fall into place that way because when you go to the sewing machine, the bottom one wants to go down because of the way the feed dogs are. So I just stop sewing, make sure that that one's going up and the other one's going down when I get to each seam. And you just kind of rock them and they just fall into place. So what this is doing is it's creating my 1/4 inch seam allowance. There was no cutting, there was no pressing, there was no this or that or the other thing. It just works. And so now when I pull this out and I open it up, look at how perfect that fake patchwork is. All my seams line up like I know what I'm doing. All right. So now I'm going to take this back to the iron and I'm going to press it. And then I'm going to show you a couple different things about the stabilizer. I'm going to take this to the other side and I want those seam allowances the way that they were going one way or the other to kind of keep doing that. So I'm going to press it so that those seam allowances are going one way, okay, and that the other seam allowances are going the other way. And then I'm going to kind of press this middle one down a little bit. I find that you get better results if you press it from the front. Okay, so now here's my next tip with this. This interfacing is just a little bit stiff. It's not a firm interfacing by any means, so it's not super stiff. But it also doesn't hold a press quite as well as just regular cotton will. So I've pressed this pretty well. It's pretty flat, but watch what happens when I steam it. When you get this interfacing steamed, it sort of melts away. So now look at how perfect that patchwork is. Okay, I didn't have to do anything super well this way. All right, so this is the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make some of these, whatever the pattern calls for. Depending on the size of the bag, they're going to have different numbers, they're going to be different sizes. Then we're going to make, in the pattern, it gives you the directions for making the little tabs. I have made those already. These are already interfaced. What I did was I folded this in half, and then I want to use a slider ring. This is a By-Annie's square slider ring. On the back side of my interfacing, see that shape right there? is the same shape as that folded in half. I want to sew it to this side, but I want it to fit that square just like that. And then I'm going to sew right along that solid line right there. I don't line the end of my handles up with that line. I line my handles up exactly inside that space, but then I'm just going to go and sew this really quick. The little shadows are really helpful to know exactly where you're supposed to put stuff. And definitely backstitch this because you don't want your handles to fall off once you get your bag all put together. Okay? Now I've already done this with the other part of the bag. So here's two other sections of the bag. I've sewn this together and sewn this together to make an L. You're going to make two of those. But since I didn't want you to have to wait around to see the making both of those panels, I went ahead and made the lining. So this is going to be the lining of the bag. Essentially what we're going to try to do here, and I did say try, yes, is I want to line this up is what I want. I want to make a shape that looks essentially like that. Okay? The design is all on the pattern and it's all printed on the interfacing. But just so you could see how the four of them lay out, they lay out like this. So if you match these two ends up, if you match your bag, this is your lining, but if you match this up, here's a tip for lining up all of your bag, your inside pieces. If you match these and you fold this over, and you can just kind of give it a finger press over here. Now when you go to sew this together, you know that this is where it ends. So you sew from this end of the fabric to here. And then when you get this all together, it's going to make sort of an X shape. Okay? Now when you get your whole bag together, your whole bag is going to go together sort of like an X too. So when we sew these together, here's another tip. When you go to sew your X's together, your folds, if you pressed them the right way, your folds are going to butt together. So if you butt this one here, and as an extra little, you're not even going to sew this seam yet, but if you square these two up and you square these two up and pin it right here where it says center bottom, then this is going to line up. And so what happens is when you put these two together and you press it, look, more perfect patchwork. So when we make all four of these and we go to put them together, because remember it's going to make sort of that X shape, right? Because the other one's going to go the other way. When we put these together, these are also going to butt together, okay? So when you get the whole thing together, you're going to have this sort of X shape. I'm not going to put that part together because it'd take too much time to get it all arranged. The last part of making the outside of the bag is, see these angles here? See how there's a marking on the bottom? When you have all four together, you're going to fold it on that line, which makes a straight line. Everything's straight on these, and I really like that because it's really easy to see. So if you line your pieces up, and you can press it if it makes it easier to get to the machine, but see how that pattern dotted line is on that part? You're going to take this to your machine and you're going to do another 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to take it back out when I actually make my bag, but I want to show you how the shape comes together. Because normally I would have all four panels put together, and this is actually going to make a square bottom. But I use a 1/4 inch seam allowance so that when I open this up, now here's one of the corners of my bag. Okay? Got that? All right, so there's that piece, and I'm going to show you what that looks like on this Mondo bag. Got all these patterns in here. Let me take all these patterns out. I gotta show them to you anyway. Woo. Okay, so the bottom of my bag, See how these all come together on an angle because they go sideways a little bit? Remember we showed you that one of the panels comes this way and one goes that way and one goes that way and one goes that way. They kind of end up wrapping around. So here is one of these. This is a smaller bag, but here's one that goes this way and it wraps down to the bottom, and here's that angle that you've got on the side. This bag's smaller than this one, okay? The directions are really easy to understand for putting the lining inside of the bag and for putting the handles in. So those are my tips for putting together these Quilt Smart bags. I really love them. They have quilt patterns, they have placemat patterns, they've got bag patterns, they've even got some doll patterns that are all printed like this. The reason I wanted to do this as a video today is because we're going to have a challenge. I can't remember the exact dates that the challenge starts, but the challenge is going to be a lot of fun. And I wanted to give you some tips for working with this stuff before the challenge comes up. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but you'll find out really soon. This is really versatile for making these bags, but also for making their quilts. One of the first videos I did on a Monday video was to make a Lone Star quilt top, and it was the same technique with the same kind of stable or interfacing. Piece of cake, because making a Lone Star quilt is a little bit crazy making. That one is so very easy. So that's what I have to show you. Does anybody have questions?
I haven't seen a single question yet.
Wow, does that mean I'm making sense today?
I think so.
Wow, look at that go. All right, well then we're going to talk about what we have on today's sale. Oh, I forgot to even put this pattern in there. All right, make sure I get these in order.
Okay.
The first pattern I have is the biddy bag, which is the bag that I was showing you how to make. So basically, it's this bag, but this size. So it makes a bag that is, it finishes what, 5.5 inches on the bottom and 9 inches tall. So it's about half the size of this midi bag. That's why this is the midi bag, because it's the one in the middle. This is the biddy bag because it's a little one. So we've got the biddy bag stabilizer kit, which has 2 bag stabilizers and the directions in it. Then we have just the interfacing. So if you already have the pattern, or you buy the pattern on today's sale and you know you want to make 10 more, then you need 1 panel to make each bag that you want to make extra. It's a lot more cost effective this way if you know that you can do it with the pattern and you want to make more. All right, so that one's what, 702? Okay. Then we've got the midi bag is number 703, which is this size bag. This is the one that I put the soft and stable in. The midi bag finishes, let's see, so this is 8-inch square on the bottom and it's 12 inches tall. As far as fabrics that you need, pretty much you can make actually you can make every one of these with a layer cake or with a jelly roll. The smaller ones you can do with smaller packages. If you're going to use mini charm packs, you need at least 2 to make any of these. Okay, but all of the fabric requirements for what you need is on the website too, so we can help you out with that. The midi bag makes 2 of these bags. If you want to make more of the midi bag, the stabilizer is number 704. And
are you not clicking now? I'm sorry.
No, you had a computer.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry,
Interfacing.
Huh?
It's all interfacing.
It's all interfacing. Do I keep saying stabilizer?
Yes.
Sorry, stabilizer is for embroidery. Interfacing is for other stuff.
But
These are interfacing.
It is called the midi bag stabilizer.
Yeah, it probably shouldn't be.
Okay.
It's an interfacing. I mean, it's a moot point. It's not, because we're not using it for embroidery. Okay. Now you could. This is one of those really great times that you can take this little patch right here and write somebody's name on it. This is the midi bag. It makes 2 bags. Then we have just the interfacing, which each panel makes 1 bag. Okay, and that's 704.
704 is the stabilizer.
Okay. Then we've got the Mondo bag, and it's the Mondo bag because she's huge. So the Mondo bag makes 1 bag that the bottom section is 10 inches and it stands 15 inches tall. So it is like twice as big as this. This one, the midi bag is about half this size. This is the midi bag. It's this size. The Mondo bag is big. It's like a nice go to the beach kind of bag. If you want to get the interfacings for this one, here, this is important. If you want to buy just the interfacings for the Mondo bag, you need 2. 2 panels will make 1 bag. because she's that big. Okay, that's the Mondo bag. Then we have, what did I put after that? Oh, the button kit.
Yes.
We've got a button kit.
We need these two.
If you want to make a matching fabric covered button, like is in the picture here, then this is a whole pack to make fabric covered buttons. It's got the tool in it and everything, and the directions are really simple. So if you want your button to match your bag, this is a really good option. There is a section of the pattern that gives you a big enough piece to cover one of these buttons. 706?
707.
707 is the buttons. Okay. Now, if you remember my Queen's Dream quilt, and she's pretty, and you like these fabrics.
Nope, not yet.
Not yet. What am I doing? Oh, the pressing mat. Sorry. This is why I always have,
It's okay.
I get it backward. This is the pressing mat, the size of pressing mat that I used for this project. If you don't have a silicone mat yet, this is a really good time to grab one. You do not want to get this sticky stuff on your iron or on your ironing board. It's a pain to get off. Then we can talk fabric. This is probably some of my favorite fabric that's ever rolled through this store. So I've made a lot of things out of it. I've got a lot of scraps of it. And now I've got another project made out of it. I love this stuff. So my fabric wrap about 2 weeks ago, she calls me up and she's like, hey, so I was cleaning out my office and I found a bunch of pre-cuts for that Odile fabric. Do you want some more? And I'm like, yeah. So we've got pre-cuts of the Odile line.
Design roll is
The design roll is
709.
709.
And the 10 inches 710.
This is 710. So this is 2.5 inch strip set, so it's a jelly roll, only Free Spirit calls theirs design rolls. This is the entire line of that Odile fabric. It has 42 strips in it, I believe. It is so beautiful. And then we've got a 10-inch layer cake as well. Same thing, has all the fabrics in it. There's 42 pieces in this as well. So if you were going to use one of these and you wanted to make, say you wanted to make the Mondo bag with the 5-inch squares, you could just cut this in half twice. You've got the 5-inch squares to make the Mondo bag. If you want to make the smaller patchwork design and you use the strip sets, that's how I made these. I just took a strip of each one and cut them into 2.5-inch squares and mixed them up. Okay? So that's all the stuff we have on today's sale. If you're looking to make a bag and you're kind of freaked out by making bags, because bags can be a little daunting and there's a lot of weirdness to them and there's a lot of inside out and upside down and stuff. This is a really good bag to start with if you haven't made a bag before. One, patchwork comes out perfect. It's already stabilized. There's no zippers, there's no buttons, there's no weirdness to it. If you want to get fancy, you can put the soft and stable in it instead of the fusible fleece. Doesn't really make it any harder. The soft and stable, you can also quilt through it if you want to make it a quilted bag. Do we have questions?
No.
Okay. All right. So that's it. That's what we have for our demo today. Our sale this Wednesday is going to be on green fabric. And then we will be on hiatus for a week and a half. So if you guys have questions or comments or concerns, or you want me to put you together some fabrics to make one of these bags, just let me know and I will hook you up. So we will see you Wednesday.